Welcome to this episode of YouTube, where I'm going to give you an update on our medical exams that occurred on the 17th of April. And our philosophy has always been manage a pack as a pack, and so that means we don't leash train, we don't do some of the work that other facilities might do to be able to get wolves conditioned to things like veterinary trips, etc. We keep wolves together as a group, and that means that when we do medical exams that are invasive, such as blood work, we need to be able to manage that pack according to rank order. So that means we need to be able to move the wolves so that Aiden, who is the dominant pack member, isn't shown as vulnerable in front of lower ranking wolves. So we use our facility design of our adjoining kennels to be able to move the pack so that Bolts and Denali went in the far back habitat out of view of the medical enclosure, and Aiden stayed in the exhibit, and the pups came into the what we call the pack holding area. So that was the first step of our exam. From there, we brought Aiden into the medical pen and again did an injectable, an IM injectable drug for immobilization. But unfortunately, as a pack leader, Aiden is very subject to stress when there's change to his pack. Okay. And we found that he was burning off the drug, and the stress that he was expressing with the separation from the pack was such that it was not in his best interest to continue the exam. So we let Aiden back into the exhibit, followed through with the pups going to the veterinary clinic to be neutered. They had very small incisions, so they had very little worry about the sutures. We then reunited the pack in order of, again, the relationship as how they would impact Aiden as the dominant pack member. So that's kind of how we structure things. And so when we brought the pups back in, it was about 2 o'clock. You can see Aiden still got a little bit of drug on him, just the way he's standing. It is a reversible drug, but for whatever reason, Aiden's body didn't take to that drug. It fought it right away because of stress, and then it took a while to get it out of his system. So that was a little unusual for that particular class of drugs. But wolves are not dogs, and there are differences, and part of it is about this rank order issue. So when the pups came back in, Aiden's going to investigate the smell, the smell of the sutures, the smell of the area where they had maybe, whether it be iodine or something like that, that smells different. And he was obviously very greeting to the pups, not showing dominance. And then an hour later, we brought out Denali, and here's where you see the rank order issue kind of come to play. He's following Denali. He's, again, reasserting his dominant rank over Denali. Well, what's interesting here is that's Grayson following Denali coming out of the pack holding area. And certainly that's kind of a pattern we've been seeing with Grayson inserting a dominance over Denali. So Axel was up on the pump housing. He wasn't as interested. We let them mingle for another hour, and then we returned Bolts to the exhibit. And Bolts was the worry because he's the one who's kind of been testing of Aiden. So we didn't want Aiden showing any weakness or any vulnerability that Bolts would pick up on. And so we kept Bolts in the far back habitat, and he was isolated by himself. While the pups were recovering, Denali was next to them. He wasn't with them, but he could visually see them, whereas Bolts was in the far back of the habitat away from everybody. So he came out with a low tail, and again, Aiden did not approach him. There was definitely a little bit of anxiety from Aiden. When Bolts came out, Bolts did a little circling, went up in the woods, slept for a while, slept with Denali. And then about 8 o'clock, we brought Beaver in. The pack got together as a group, and we made sure that night that there was no underlying tension and rank issues related to Aiden. So it's a process in order to get this done. According to our USDA vet plan, all wolves are required to have a complete medical exam with blood draw every 3 years. And so Aiden actually had a blood draw in 2014, so we're still within the USDA parameters, but we still would like to get more work on him. So we're going to try for that later in the summer when prolactin hormone, which is a nurturing hormone, is more stimulated, and we're going to hopefully have less issues with rank. So obviously when we fed a lot of beaver, we had a lot of company. You're probably used to seeing the multitude of ravens that enter our facility, but if you look very closely on the left, there are 2 turkey vultures that come in to utilize and scavenge on some of the beaver that the wolves have excess meat available. And this surveillance video was taken one day after the medical exams. Of course, it's raining. You know, it's not in our best interest to recover pups, you know, in the rain, but we don't have a lot of choices. The weather is what the weather is. Obviously, pups don't wear cones to protect themselves from stitches. Like I said, the vets do a great job of keeping those sutures very small, and so it really became kind of a non-issue. But the extra food, like I said, brought in scavengers. So the turkey vultures, you can even see they have their own rank order. Turkey vultures can drive off ravens, and so as far as rank, ravens are below turkey vultures. But what we do see is a little bit more influence of eagles, and we have several, I believe staff counted 7 eagles, different eagles that have been visiting the enclosure this spring. So we have migratory eagles that are coming back from the winter migration, but we have resident eagles as well. So we have a combination of both coming into the exhibit and feeding. Someone had asked if they're a concern for eagles with our wolves, and yes, we do know that eagles have picked up dogs. We do know that eagles have even picked up lambs. So their talons are strong, they're capable, and we did have a concern with our little white puppies in this spring background of dark, but again, the wolves are running, Grayson's about maybe 85 pounds or 90 pounds, and Axel's about 95 pounds, so weight-wise, they're probably not going to get them off the ground, but it is always a concern when we have scavengers, especially things like eagles. So after the exam, we continue to monitor the wolf pack and how they're getting along. And one thing we did on Saturday, Earth Day, we celebrated our 1,000th visitor that had come through the facility in March. And that meant we did what's called an enclosure enrichment. And this is a program that we do every summer, usually June 15th to August 15th during the summertime, because the wolves are animals that tend to be a little more nocturnal or crepuscular. Crepuscular is dawn and dusk activity in the summer, and so that means that they're not as stimulated to be up and moving around in the heat of the day. So what we do every summer is we do a noon enrichment, and this enrichment was eggs. We had someone inquire as to whether eggs were something that wolves consumed, where they consume the eggshells, and so we thought we'd do a little research and as well as do an enclosure enrichment. We gave hard-boiled eggs and raw eggs. The raw eggs were more favorable. But the hard-boiled eggs had stimulus as well, and they, yes, do eat eggshells. So that was a Saturday enrichment. Got the wolves pretty busy because some of the eggs fell through the cracks in the rock, and it gave the wolves something to focus on and to interact. But the reality is most of the stimulus comes from being a social pack animal. So over in retirement, we're happy to have Grizzer and Luna back together. We still haven't quite made the diagnosis on Grizzer. He is improving. But we wanted to make sure, again, that at 13 years of age that he's stable enough for immobilization. So we're in the process of kind of monitoring him and seeing how he's doing before we decide to go in and do a complete blood work on him. But what we have been noticing with these two is they do like the east side den, and it seems to be the prime real estate around here. There are other dens. The pack holding area has a den, small, but still they have a den. The back habitat has a nice big den. They have cover hay in the connecting kennel, but still they seem to like this den the best. And so we've been seeing a little bit of compatibility issues. You know, Grizzer a little stiff getting up there, as any 12-year-old is. But we've been watching Grizzer take possession of this den a little bit more. So here's a clip where Grizzer, and we noticed Grizzer going to bed early, so he gets that den. But Luna wanting to stimulate him, wanting him to get up and move, so she does her little scrape the ground, tail wag, what we call invite chase, sometimes go down in a play bow, try to get him excited to get up and leave, and follow her so that she can take over the den. At least that's what the pattern seems to be. So she goes around and tries to see if she can stimulate him, that there's something maybe going on, something to follow. He doesn't take the bait. And so she comes back and she tries it again. Notice her tail's down low, her head's down low. She has been, and we've had several times on the surveillance camera where they are sleeping together, so we know that they can work it out. But it's nice to see a little humility in Luna in this clip for someone who's not always had a lot of humility in her life. But it is, like I say, it's kind of interesting to watch the mind process. You know, distractions are some things that we use to get wolves away from tools or something like that, or to get animals who are stressed to not obsess about the stress. We use a distraction. Luna's using a distraction here to try to get Grizzer out of the den, and again, he's not falling for it. So we find it kind of interesting. Like say, she scrapes the ground, she, you know, does a little stimuli, then she does a little run. We call that invite chase. You know, he again doesn't take the bait. And Grizzer does this as well. He does we call it the Grizzer 500. But in this particular instance, he wasn't giving up space. Luna was trying to judge if she could fit, and low tail comes in. Grizzer does a little bit of threat display, not wanting to share, and then decides it's just easier to go to a different bet. So they're getting along. And again, when we separated for Grizzer's leg issue, we did hear a lot of whining between the fences between these two. So we knew that there was a social relationship, and we tried to get them back together. And like I say, there's a little conflict over the bedding, but for the most part, they're together a lot. So that's it, and we'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.